Hello and welcome to the walking talking topic on simultaneous equations, question number 4 with me, Mr. Barton. Now we've reached our first non-linear simultaneous equation here. We've got a nasty little x squared lurking, and it's not even a nice non-linear one this, because we've got an x tied together with a y there that's going to mess things up, and here we've got an x plus y equals 8. Now there's a few techniques to solve these linear and when you've got a linear and a quadratic simultaneous equation, and it'll depend which one you're faced with, which technique you choose, but one that always works is substitution, so I'm going to use that one here. Now I've got an x squared, I've got an x, and I've got a 6, and I've got it equal to 0. That's almost a nice quadratic equation, apart from this nasty y that's messing things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that y. And the way I'm going to get rid of it is I'm going to rearrange this second equation so it's y equals and substitute it in. Okay, so I'm going to take this second equation here, x plus y equals 8, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take x off both sides. So I'm going to end up with y equals 8 minus x, just simply taking x off both sides. And then I've got this equation with a y equals, and I've got a y tucked around in that equation. So I'm going to replace my y in the first equation with this second y. So just watch this. I start off with 3x squared plus xy plus 6 equals 0. But I know y is equal to 8 minus x. So let's replace this y with an 8 minus x. So I end up with 3x squared plus x, but instead of writing y, I'm going to write 8 minus x plus 6 equals 0. Now that looks horrendous, but the good news is I've now got a quadratic equation where the only letter in it is x. So I can solve that. So I've got 3x squared, expand my brackets, so I get 8x, x times minus x is minus x squared plus 6 equals 0. Tidy things up a bit, 3x squared, take off an x squared is 2x squared, plus 8x plus 6 equals 0. Right, so I've got a quadratic equation. So I've done the hard bit now, but now I've got to think, how do I solve a quadratic equation? Well, the first thing is it's got to be equal to 0. This is, so that's good news. Now, always look for an opportunity to tidy things up. I've got 2x squared, 8x and 6. Because it's an equation, I can, as long as I do the same to this side as this side, I can do whatever I like. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So instead of having 2x squareds, I've got 1x squared. Instead of having 8x's, I've got 4x's. Instead of having 6, I've got 3. And 0 divided by 2 is just 0. Now that's a lot tidier now. Now, I've got to solve this equation. Your first port of call should always be to try and factorize. And remember your rules for factorizing. It's got to multiply together to make this number at the end, and it's got to add together to make 4. That only works if you've just got 1x squared. Can you think of two brackets that'll work for that? Well, I reckon if it's an x and an x, if I go for a 3 and a 1, I think it's going to times together to make 3 and add together to make 4. So let's go for that, 3 and 1. But I've not solved it yet. I've factorized it. So I need a solution for this bracket. I need a value of x that makes this bracket equal to 0, so that when I do 0 times by whatever this is, I get 0. So I reckon that's x equals minus 3. I need a value of x that makes this bracket equal to 0, or I reckon that's x equals minus 1. But then I need my pair of y values that go with it. And remember, x plus y equals 8. That's probably going to be your easiest equation to use to solve it. Or in fact, your rearrangement here, y equals 8 minus x. That's probably going to be even easier. So if x is minus 3, y is equal to 8 minus whatever x is. Well, x was minus 3. 8 minus minus 3, I think that's going to be y equals 11. So when x is minus 3, y is equal to 11. And if x is minus 1, y is equal to 8 minus minus 1. 8 minus minus 1, I reckon, is 9. So when x is equal to minus 1, y is equal to 9. Now, if you have time left at the end of your exam, you can check this, because if you substitute your values of x and y into this first equation, if they work, if it equals 0, you know you've got it right. If it doesn't work, you know you've got it wrong. I'm just going to do it with one of them just to show you what I mean. So let's take this second pair here. So this is only if you've got time. 3x squared plus xy plus 6 should equal 0. I know my x is minus 1 and I'm claiming my y is 9. So 3 lots of minus 1 squared plus minus 1 times by 9 plus 6. What does that equal? Well, 3 lots of minus 1 squared. Minus 1 squared is 1, times by 3 is 3. Minus 1 times 9 is minus 9. So I've got 3 minus 9, add 6. 3, take 9 is minus 6, plus 6 equals 0. So I'm thinking I might have got it right. So there's that one. Tricky question there. And then, just to mess you up a bit more, look what comes here. Use the formula method to solve 2x squared plus 5x minus 4 equals 0, giving your answer correct to 2 decimal places. Now, they didn't have to say using the formula method there, and often they don't. Your clue that it's going to be a formula job is this bit. 2 decimal places. It can't be factorising if it's 2 decimal places. That's going to be a calculator job. So we need our quadratic formula, which you get at the front of your exam. Minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac square rooted all over 2 lots of a. Now let's get our values of a, b and c. So a is the number of x squareds, that's 2. b is the number of x's, that is 5. C is the number at the end, and that is not 4, that is a minus 4. Just be careful. And then just substitute them in, but be very, very careful. So minus b, that's minus 5. Plus or minus b squared, that's 5 squared, minus 4 times a, that's 2, times by minus 4, that's c. Notice I've put my minus in a bracket. I always do that. Divide the whole thing by 2 lots of a, that's 2 lots of 2. Now I like to work out my square root next, so minus 5 plus or minus. Now I might as well use my calculator because I've got it here. So I'm going to do 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times minus 4. Press my equals, and that's coming to 57. If you ever get a negative in your square root, you want to just double check it a little bit because it's not going to solve. And unless it's a particularly devious question, you should always be hoping for a positive in your square root there. So I've got minus 5 plus or minus the square root of 57, all divided by 4. Then I like to split it into 2. So that's minus 5 plus the square root of 57 over 4. And then I'll have a little arrow going down here, minus 5 minus the square root of 57 over 4. And I've just got to bang these two in my calculator and get my answer out. So let's do my first one. Minus 5 plus the square root of 57. I then press equals on my calculator, divide my answer by 4, press equals, and then press my SD button. And that's going to come to 0.63745 ... And I want my answer to what? 2 decimal places? 0.64 to 2 dp. But if you write the full calculator value out like that, you double your chances of getting the full marks, because sometimes they're even nice, and if they see a more accurate answer, even if you mess up your rounding, they tend to give you the mark. So final one, we have minus 5 minus the square root of 57, press equals, divide your answer by 4, press your SD button, and I'm getting minus 3.13745 ... otherwise known as minus 3.14 to 2 dp. So there's a nice little bonus question for you there, not on simultaneous equations, but you've got to be on your toes in this exam.